Welcome to the Duke Long Commercial Real Estate with a Little Attitude podcast. Thank you for listening.
And welcome again today to the Duke Long Commercial Real Estate with a Little Attitude podcast. And today we have Wes Snow. Wes is the founding partner for Ascendix Technologies, which I know as a CRM. How you doing today, Wes?
I'm wonderful, Duke. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you on here. I've been in your guys' office out there in Dallas, and I got to say one thing right off the bat. You know how to cater, dude. What do we have? We had like barbecue. We had like cornbread. I said, this dude's from Texas. That's what I'm talking about.
You get the full meal deal while you're in town, sir.
I still remember. No, you and I have had many conversations over the years, certainly about CRM. And I know you're way deep into it. So give me a brief history of Ascendix and the journey. And I know you've been doing it for a while, but give me an idea of where it's been, because it's been more than 10, 15 years. Has it been that long?
Yeah. So, I knew we'd been doing it for a while when I started hiring people that were the age of my daughter. I was like, my gosh, I don't know where the time has gone, but we've been at this for over 22 years, all of which have been in the CRM space. It wasn't even called CRM back in that day. It was Salesforce automation. Customer relationship management came later. We were actually focused on really just being a consulting firm. We're selling other people's software and doing it in a non-vertical fashion. So if you were interested in automating your front office, your business development efforts, we were your huckleberry. We showed up and helped you configure and import data into your Salesforce automation tools at the time. Heck, we were this, for those that have been out there in the space for a while, appreciate these brands. How about ACT, obviously, people still know that one, but Goldmine, Telemagic, Maximizer. These were all the very popular tools of the day, and there were cottage industries for Salesforce automation consultancies out there. And then as the market matured and players started to come in like Salesforce and Microsoft, we started to move from kind of this middle market to kind of upstream into enterprise deployments. Again, still doing more of a horizontal play. And then about 13 years ago, we decided to abandon the generic VAR, as they call it, value-added reseller model, and start to specialize in a particular vertical. And after having looked at the marketplace and the underserved space that is the commercial real estate technology area, we decided that we were going to focus our efforts in developing subject matter expertise as well as great tools for the commercial real estate sector. And we've been doing that ever since, and exclusively so. So today we find ourselves now in market with a commercial real estate version of Ascendix RE on top of Salesforce.com, as well as the Dynamics 365 platform from Microsoft.
So I'm old enough, and I've said this a couple times. This dates me, but it wasn't that long ago. I remember when I had the first CRM that I got involved in. I had like a 3.5 disc, which the time, that's how it came in the mail, and I had to load it all in, and then it was all these different things. So give me an idea, kind of compare and contrast what the tools were from the early days, because that's how I'm relating to it.
Yeah.
And why are they better now from what that was to DOS to 3.5 or whatever, and to now what we call the SAS, or the software as a service specific platforms?
That's funny you say it that way, because when we first started in the game, there were those 3.5 inch, actually the 5.25, I think, were still out there a little bit, but we got, into the 3.5.
22 years ago, dude.
That's crazy.
I'm only 40. I was 10 when that happened. I'm 35. I was 30. So I'm just joking.
And what a banner day. We go to these conferences and we pick up the latest builds of the software, and we didn't even have to go bring a suitcase back with us with those discs in there. We had these CDs that they started putting them on that allowed us to take all that was on, say, the 15 install discs for the DOS version of ACT or Goldmine or Maximizer, and now it was all brought down to one CD. And so highly portable. And we thought we were big back then.
That was cruising, man. You had a little thing, you could just slide it in your tower,
right.
you know.
In your tower, baby. Yeah.
And you
exactly.
had to get an external disc thing on the outside to get that. I remember getting those. God, that makes me feel like 1,000 years old. That wasn't that long ago, though.
No, it really wasn't. But that does paint a picture as to how far we've come. Back when we started, the thought of having a visitless deployment, and when I mean visitless, we never show up on the doorstep of the client, was so far removed. There's just no even thinking that we could do that, where, hey, it's all going to be just deployed. We'll sit here, you guys sit there, we'll do all the installation, all the deployment, the data transformation, even the training we'll do from afar. Back in the day when you're feeding disks or diskettes into these towers to do the install, it was a completely different world. And so that speaks to one of the major transitions from a software-based approach where you had perpetual licenses of software that had maintenance contracts and such associated with them, to now today having this software as a service. And that has fundamentally changed things in just layers that people don't even think about, one of which is cost. These perpetual licensed applications, there is a bit of an upfront cost to actually pay for the licenses. All that was paid for in advance oftentimes. And then you had this ongoing maintenance. But you also had the tools, or at that place in time, just weren't overly configurable. And the thought of you self-administering the installation was really far-fetched as well. And so you had to have a consultancy, and good thing, because that was my business model, right? Was to be a consultancy for these companies. And so we'd go in there and spend a month, 2 months, maybe 6 months at a time, kind of advising, consulting, configuring, deploying, and all that good stuff. And candidly, for a large part of the market, that was cost prohibitive. There's just no way that someone could pay to play that game. I remember, and we're just talking this morning about some of these past sales cycles, where not only were we going to have to fly our team out there and pass along that travel expense, but we were going to sit there for 2 or 3 weeks and interact with them and so forth, and have to have conversations around hardware. And we were asking them to pay upfront, and mind you, upfront for a work group of 10, maybe 15 users, around $40,000. Jeez. And to our credit, I was able to sell some of that stuff.
God bless you. Hey, God bless you.
Oh my goodness! And then we figured out why we were not able to penetrate this low end of the market. There's not a lot of people with $40,000 in their top desk drawer, right?
There we go.
Paying for this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter how good it is.
Not your average, basic brokerage or whatever. Not usually.
No, not usual at all. And they weren't in the hardware businesses at all either, right? And this was not even practical to think that a commercial real estate company would go out there and know to go buy hardware and have the wherewithal to care and feed for it. It just was a non-starter. And then along comes software as a service, where you no longer have to worry about all that hardware. You don't have to understand these complicated perpetual license models and contracts and so forth. You simply get your credit card out and you're paying something less than a cell phone payment a month for an industrial strength tool that does all, if not more, than those tools that we deployed back in the day do, and do so with great speed. And so a lot of these barriers to entry back in the day, which allowed for only the finite few to really enjoy the benefits of this automation, now this has been, I'll call it, democratized, so that people can not only get past that financial hurdle, but once they get past that financial hurdle, they're learning that they don't have to have a consultant sit on their back porch for 6 months to actually go in there and configure the tool. They don't have to, have a PhD in SQL, standard SQL language and import routines. They can actually go through a 3 to 5 minute video and understand how to prepare data and bring the data wherever it might reside, whether it be, a spreadsheet or an old version of ACT or even Outlook address book, and bring all of that data into this much more robust tool. So we're just changing the rules of the game completely so that everybody can play, and not just those who are technically inclined or have a really fat wallet. These things are changing fundamentally who all is playing. And the good news is that when more people play, the market matures and evolves much more rapidly. And so all boats rise with the rising tide. And so there are a number of stories like that I could tell. Another one happens to be mobility. Mobility has taken this to a whole new place where you're no longer chained to your desk if you want to benefit from this knowledge base that you commit to inside of what we call CRM today. As a matter of fact, I'll tell a great story. Last Monday, I got called out to jury duty, and we eat our own dog food. We're not a commercial real estate company, but we do use CRM, right? And so I had a mobile version of my CRM out on my phone, and I was in jury duty, and effectively it said, "Hey guys, I'm basically out for the day. I'll do what I can with my email and what I've got on my phone, but don't expect a lot from me today." Well, there as jury duties go, certainly here in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and there were a lot of hurry up and wait time. And so there's some dead periods. And I was able to do, because I had basically taken myself off the radar, commit to and focus on a lot of business development activity. And all that was made possible, not because I had my email in my inbox and I had my contacts in my address book, because I had my knowledge base, my CRM system on my mobile phone with my pipeline and all my deals that hadn't been touched or needed to be touched, and was able to work through that entire pipeline there while I was in Collin County Courthouse and actually become a sales juggernaut as opposed to being a wasted day. I was able to have a very productive day and move many deals through the pipeline at a pace that would have otherwise been a distraction day where all the emails and such coming in. So mobility, the point being is mobility has really allowed us to be productive and informed wherever we might be. And that certainly wasn't the case back in the day. And heck, for that matter, a short, 3 years ago, mobility wasn't all that evolved. And now it is. And it's with the ability to have essentially a T1 in your pocket 95% of the time in the domestic United States. Your bandwidth is no longer an issue. And so, this whole trick of having to synchronize data back and forth, which failed us miserably in the first 20 years of my practice, we've now got direct access to all this information that's out in the cloud. And so just a lot of different technologies converging and making available these wonderful tools to the commercial real estate brokerage as a whole.
So when I you and I've had these conversations, and some of the practicality that you're talking about, when I think about how someone is using your product, first of all, I think about some of the people at JLL, because I know you're pretty deep with JLL, and of course you have many, many customers across the planet. Mm-hmm. Okay, don't get me wrong, but it's like, so I think about a broker in jail in Miami or wherever, and what are they using the CRM? How are they using your CRM, and how are they using it to kind of be competitive, as you just talked about? So it's a pipeline tool. It's this and that. How are you using your CRM to kind of stay on top?
Yeah. So while it starts with a commitment to contact management, it goes in layers, and you've got to start there and then build on top of it. So let's start with that. And so most of those who are having great success with it have made a commitment, and I mean an intentional commitment, to have relationships that they care about be input into the CRM system, not casually, not all just the ones that I feel like are going to turn into deals, but everything. It's binary in my mind. What I've seen is those who have great success with CRM have gone full tilt into it and not just use it casually. And so for starters, they put all of their contacts in there. And when I say contacts, I'm talking about the people that you're doing business with or want to do business with. So leads, prospects, inquiries, you name it. They commit to having that information in there, and they rely on proper security policies and things of that nature to be deployed so that only those records that they want to have visible are made visible. So that's step one, is to commit to that, because without that, that's kind of the building blocks, right? And so once you've got that going, and now that those contacts are going to be available to you on your desktop, on your mobile, wherever, then you now have the beginnings of the next step, which is then actually committing your notes. And they make an intentional commitment to, when conversations like you and I are having right now, and we're having some very important detailed discussions about specifics around a transaction or a future transaction, they commit those to the CRM system, not to their big chief tablet, not to some Franklin Covey daytime planner, but they put it into the system so that they can reflect back on it. And that's also true for activities, future and historical, so they can not only benefit personally from what's been said to whom, when, and what, but if they are working in a team, whether it be small or large, those folks get the benefit of seeing that interaction as well. And so it starts off with those two pieces. First, the contact management, then activity and correspondence tracking. That's just the beginning. That's table stakes, right? That's where you would expect everybody to deduce that they would start this. But if you stop there, you've really got nothing more than, well, not that there's no value in there, but it's certainly important. But to compete at a next level, you need to start tracking profile information, preferences. Take, for instance, tenant rep brokers who are out there having conversations with prospective tenants or existing tenants about expiration dates, square footage requirements, building classes and types, and having all that not relegated to some arbitrary note field, but profiled in a way such that they can go in there and mine the database down the road. And moreover, and this is where you really get to the holy grail of using CRM, is to allow the CRM system to start working on your behalf. You got this term AI being bandied about, and I'm not speaking necessarily about deep AI or artificial intelligence today, but simply allowing for workflows and triggers, business triggers, to be deployed such that if you take the time to profile these relationships that you care about, whether it be expiration dates or sale dates or what have you, you can now have the system almost act as an alarm, like a fire alarm for your house, where it goes off before something bad happens, like loss of life or loss of property. You can put these fire alarms in place in your CRM system so that before something bad happens or before you miss out on something good, that alarm goes off and tells you to go in there and take action on, say, for instance, that renewing tenant that you are actually allowing yourself to be commoditized because you've not touched base with them in the last 18 months. It tells you, hey, there's been a period of inactivity. You need to wake up and start maturing this relationship because someone else, if you're not doing it, someone else is. So there are a variety of things that we can do now if we take the time to set up information in this database where the system can work on your behalf, as opposed to you feeling like it's a one-way information flow where you're just putting information in and then occasionally being able to use it as a reference card. You're now putting information in and then allowing for the system, through the intelligence that is now available to be imputed into it, actually work on your behalf and do things for you. Great example here. And again, another thing that's an example of how these customers like the JLLs and the Transwesterns are using the tool is they are allowing for prescriptive guided selling processes to help them through the period in which they meet with someone to the time that they actually are ready to start having vibrant discussions. It's call it the buying cycle, right? And so we got to realize that just because we pick up the phone and call them on a monthly basis, if that's the trough between when we first communicated with them and the time of their need, that could be a long trough. And if we don't have some plan that's going to put us persistently in front of them, then we'll run out of energy before we actually get to their buying cycle. And so using these CRM technologies, something as simple as a 6 to 12 touch plan allows for a broker who is closing business today do so, but without compromising the business that they're trying to cultivate tomorrow. And so imagine, Duke, having had a conversation with a tenant rep or a tenant who is going to be the lease is going to be expiring in 3 years. Well, it seems like a lifetime. And what does the normal broker do? Well, heck, 3 years, there's really no sense in even having a meaningful conversation. At best, I'll put their name and their number in here, and I'll schedule a follow-up phone call in 8 months. That's not much of a relationship. Or you could have the broker who actually puts their name and number in there and puts them in a particular category, which immediately puts them on an assigned track to nurture that relationship so that when that 18th month between now and the 3 years comes about, they've immediately started to hear about and hear from us more regularly on topics that are germane to the fact that they're about to have a lease expire on them. That's a completely different relationship. And candidly, if I'm still living off of stone tablets and knives or a Big Chief tablet, I'm not going to be able to participate that level of the game. If I've got this stuff electronically stored in a database that has these sophisticated tools, whether it be desktop, mobile, the workflow enablement, I'm now operating at a level of efficiency and effectiveness that I could only have hoped to achieve in the past. And now the small one-person shop that I might be now appears to the outward-facing public as about a band of 12 very talented sales reps, and all I'm doing is simply leveraging technology in an appropriate way. And so this is the kind of thing that I'm passionate about and is the next level usage of CRM. And I'll tell you honestly, most people, don't get past the first base on this journey. They get in there and they feel like they've got a sense of accomplishment by just simply having brought their data in there and having it be, this lookup and Rolodex. But those who actually persevere and take the time to learn what can be done and enjoy these next level benefits, they're the ones who are succeeding out there and actually working smarter and not harder. So
with the CRMs and the way they're evolving, and you show me a lot of the stuff, and I greatly appreciate it. I mean, you really dig in deep, and we're doing all these, you and I do the screen shares and all those different kinds of things. Give me an idea, in your opinion. You talked a little bit about where CRM is going. Okay, tell me a little bit more about that, and tell me how you think it integrates with some of the stuff that's out there now. Is that really important? Where does it fit in the stack? Do you have an idea about some of that, or is that just, or some of the other things just so far removed from CRM that it's its own individual animal? What do you think about that? Because again, you've been doing this for a while, and I know you know a lot about it.
So here's an interesting little side note. When we first started selling CRM, because it was this on-premise perpetual licensing that required hardware, we had no choice but to go and sell to the C-suite of these large organizations, the CXOs, CIOs, and so forth. And because it was a very healthy price tag. And we were convinced that if we could get the head of the snake to buy in on the vision, that they could push down that message to the individual brokers. Wrong philosophy, by the way. Never really worked all that effectively in the vast majority of these deployments. What we found is that if you actually treated this as a grassroots effort and you won the hearts and the minds of the brokers, that they would tell two friends and they would tell two friends, and those friends would most likely be within that same brokerage group or in others that they do business with. And that's how you actually had success in deploying CRM. Now, to the kind of dovetailing that into the question you've asked about integrations and so forth, what we found was what the CXOs wanted, the brokers wanted something very different. And so we got lulled into saying no to very little with regards to integrating this and making the CRM tool do not only front office, but back office tasks and so forth, and found that overwhelmed the traditional broker big time. And they found that the tool ended up becoming over-engineered. It was top-heavy, unapproachable, not intuitive. And so it took us a while to learn this lesson. And boy, we paid a big price for it. We lost a lot of market share early on before we figured it out. And now I've kind of course corrected. But ultimately, we found that there's a fine balance, and less is oftentimes more with regards to what you're having the CRM system do. I'm not saying go just Rolodex here, but I'm also not saying that you want this thing to become kind of the one-stop shop for both front office and back office computing and so forth. And so I'm finding that if you try to shoot for everything being in the tool, but nobody uses it, did you really accomplish anything? And so we're actually going back to the drawing board in many of these cases and saying, you know what, forget the integrations that seem like a really interesting idea, at least for now. Let's focus on getting the fundamentals in place, letting people get a centralized company and contact database for the right population of users, whether it's just their work group or just them, and then allowing them to mature and evolve into using this as kind of this full commitment correspondence tracking tool, start profiling companies in a way that they've not done in the past and benefiting from the automated workflows and so forth, accessing it mobile. And then at that point, then we can start talking about integrating it and putting a little bit more sophistication to it. Perhaps there's business intelligence tools that you want to apply to it, document management facilities that you want to apply to it, email service provider tools. These are all things that come in, but if they're introduced way too early, we see that the ends don't justify the means, if you will. And so we're very careful not to get too carried away with having this thing be this chassis that all these bolt-ons are on there until it's time to do so. And so I guess what I've learned here, Duke, and it may or may not be a direct answer to the question you asked, is less is more in the early stages. And oftentimes it can be that way for some time. People still get great value out of it, but making sure that we understand that CRM was developed for a certain set of tasks and so forth. And when we start stretching it because of its flexible platform nature to do other things, we can actually end up confusing the end user and end up having it be an adoption problem pretty quickly.
Well, I find it And again, I've said this 1,000 times. I find it amazing that you can try to be in this business and not have a valuable CRM product that you're using. And not like I was Mr. Techie back in the day. But part of the reason that I did it way back then is because there was nothing out there that you could find. I mean, you almost had to create your own database to a certain extent. And now they're so robust. There are so much other data sets that you're bringing in to help I would say qualify or business intelligence, as you mentioned, some of those kinds of things. So how do you not use one? And of course, I'm not harping on it or whatever, but it's like, so you're going to hold that data away like it's so special that nobody's going to find it. I just find it fascinating that again, as you mentioned, where you can touch somebody maybe every month instead of waiting for them for 8 months down the road and all these different kinds of things that are going on. Just give me a quick, though, here, and we'll end it up. Give me a quick idea of the next 3 or 4 things that you're really looking at that you feel like is something that everyone should be kind of looking at with CRM and commercial real estate here in the next, I don't know, few months or so, what you're kind of working on?
Yeah. So we're working on, and those that we have platforms, alignment with platforms are working on. Artificial intelligence is something that you're going to hear more and more about. The tools that normally were only used by and understood by the academicians, the PhDs of the world, those are now becoming, I hate to overuse the word democratized, but they're now becoming tools that Duke, you and I can actually understand.
Well, there we go.
It's a good thing. There we go. We'll put it that way, right? And so allowing for a broker who has command of their voice. I think we all know that brokers and salespeople in general, I being one of them, have command of the voice and can articulate. But to be able to say something in a natural language and allow for that which would have required a programmer to communicate and feed to the database is now something that the broker, just through this tool that they have complete control over their voice, to go out there and get data out of the system. Typing is removed, voice recognition, automatically building out these requests. And that's something that is very interesting to allow for CRM tools to give the sales rep, in a generic term, a more effective means to make decisions and just interact with their constituencies. So that's something I think you're going to continue to see. Mobile evolution, no question about that. You've got, on that note, I would say that we're actually trying to keep this from being a Swiss Army knife approach and actually having more of what I'll call a modular approach to mobility, so that we're trying to solve certain business problems instead of trying to solve everything in one app. Envision your iPhone or Android device with a number of apps on it solving different problems, as opposed to one app trying to solve everything. And so there's a departure in our philosophy on that. I think there's continued effort on marketing automation. Certainly, if I were to kind of put in priority the hottest topics here, it's the marketing automation realm and artificial intelligence. And so you're going to see a good bit of work going on around those fronts, with mobility coming in right there afterwards. So those are some of the themes there. But again, those are heady ideas, and then they can get a little bit overwhelming. And I'd go back to the basics in closing and say, it's about just going back and trying to achieve simple victories early on, and allowing those to be stepping stone and building blocks for some of the more advanced topics that, if you persevere, you can get there. And once you get there, you are, you're a force to be reckoned with. And competitively speaking, if you're not doing it, others are, and you will end up finding yourself on the wrong end of that business transaction down the road.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. All the people that I know that are hitters, they all got, and I would say they kind of like, they're secretive about it. They're not secretive about it, but they have their way of using it. Wes, I love talking to you. I learned so much from you. All these screen things that we do all the time, all the different things, the way you think about stuff, it helps me a lot. It actually helps me think and look at different software also. So I really appreciate that, because I guess it comes back to the old broker in me, because that's where I kind of came from. So it helps me understand it better, because I did have to learn that. Well, Wes, we got to do this again. This is wonderful. I had a great time. Thanks so much for taking the time for the podcast. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is the Duke Long Commercial Real Estate with Little Attitude podcast, and thanks for listening. Please go check out my website, dukelong.com, every Tuesday for a new podcast episode. Also, every Wednesday and Sunday for a new written article.
And every Thursday, you can get my newsletter in your inbox. And if you don't have any of those, please go to my website and click. Thank you very much.